All right, here we go. So on your guys' you ready? Good. All right. So on your guys' schedule, it says, I think, infectious diseases right now. Well, I feel this one's a little bit more important, and since we're where we are at on time, and I didn't want to cut Travis and Doc Owen short. So we're going to kind of put the infectious disease one in our back pocket here a little bit and see where we can fit that in. So this is going to be kind of a continuation of what Doug talked about last night. A little bit more in depth in spots, but also a lot of the same stuff that he talked about. So we're going to talk about EMS incident management. And for those of you that are fire-based in the room, this kind of carries over to fire scenes as well. So don't think that this is only for EMS. So when we talk about disasters, and Doug hit on this last night, is these can be very overwhelming to our small services, right? You look around, we've got some services in the room. We have Eureka or West McPherson. We have Groton Rescue. We've got Webster, those types of services. When you get something that requires more than one ambulance or more than about 5 people, you start scrambling, right? So as we go through this, start thinking about your disaster plans that you have. And if you are looking at your neighbor and be like, well, we don't have any, guess what? You should probably have some. Because if you don't have disaster plans in place, it's going to be mass chaos, not even controlled chaos when something like this happens. And we get to the end of this chapter, or we get to the end of this slideshow, we'll kind of hit home with it a little bit. Something that happened last summer that required quite a response in our state. So when we talked about those, yep. Yeah. So that's a great question. That's a great question. I'm going to try to do it the most politically correct way. I'm going to try to answer that the most politically correct way. So 2 parts to your answer. Yes, emergency managers in all these counties have these disaster plans. The other question is, or the other answer is, I would bet, I'm shooting from the hip on this, 60% of our counties have those plans, but the EMS people and the fire people have never seen them. Because they're required by their state statute to receive state dollars and federal dollars to put those in place. But that's kind of where it stops sometimes in some of those counties. Now, we have some really, really good emergency managers across the state that do integrate that. They do sponsor drills. I know McPherson County, for example, Leola, Eureka area, we're lucky enough to have our emergency manager is a responder. He's the county sheriff, he's an EMT, and he's a volunteer firefighter. So he wears all those hats. So he kind of sees that need. And instead of doing the every other year drill that he's required to do, we've now got into the mode of doing one every year. So we're bringing responders together. We're bringing fire departments together. And some years we get all agencies involved. Some years it's maybe just one side of the county, just depending upon what's going on and schedules, but you're still thinking about it. So that's a really good point that Terry brought up, is talk to your emergency manager and see what those plans look like. Even with those plans, they are more of a high level plan. They are a county type based plan. So don't forget to look at the plans within your own agency. How are we going to respond to a bus accident with 50 people? How are we going to do that? Where are we going to get, and Doug talked about it last night with Spencer Tornado, where are we going to find 20 ambulances? If I take McPherson County, for example, off the top of my head, just because I've been involved in fire and EMS for 20 years in this area, this is max. This isn't if we're going to get them all. So something happens in between Leola and Eureka, okay? We can get 2 ambulances from Leola, 2 ambulances from Eureka, possibly 1 or 2 from Ashley, 2 from Ipswich, 1 from Harriet, 1 from Selby. Where are we at? About 7? Where am I going to get my other 13 if I need 20? You know, we're reaching out to the city of Aberdeen. They might give us 1 or 2. We're reaching out to Aberdeen Ambulance. They might give us 1 or 2. So, I mean, we're sitting at 9. Where are we going to get the rest? We're going to be asking entities from 50, 60, 70, 80 miles away to start sending ambulances our way. So that's something to think about, is when you have something that's even going to require 4 ambulances, where are you going to get them from? If you're not thinking about that and you're not putting that into a plan when it happens, I want to use a phrase, but it's definitely not politically correct. Something to do with a monkey, right? So that's how it's going to be, is if we don't have those plans in place and we don't work within the incident command system and the incident command structure, we're really going to be struggling. So you bet. And, you know, to that point, I've heard it so often across the state on the fire and the EMS side when I start bringing up incident command and how that works. And the response that I get more often than not is, we're just volunteers. We don't do that. Yeah, you do. If you look at some of the federal disasters that have happened in our state and our volunteer ambulance services and fire departments and even municipal services for that matter, if you guys are working 48, 96 hours straight, you're taking time off your job, you're putting a whole bunch of money into this, you're depleting your treasury. If you don't have your incident command papers that you fell into during that incident, you're not going to get paid if it's declared a federal disaster. That's that easy. There's been departments out there that have left $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in federal money sitting on the table because they haven't filled out the right paperwork, because they don't know how. So that's another thing to think about, is if you have a federally declared disaster and you don't have the right paperwork, FEMA's going to tell you, see you later. We're not going to give you nothing. So how many patients would you consider an MCI? Doug asked this question last night. We're not going to rehash it. Some services, we get 2 patients. That's an MCI. Some services, we might be 3 or 4, just depending upon how large your service is, how many resources you have. So when we fit into the incident command system, what that does is that makes it possible to do the greatest good for the greatest number with smaller amounts of resources. So NIMS, National Incident Management System, you guys have all heard of ICS 100, 200, and NIMS 700. And I'm betting there's at least one person in the room or online who was like, oh, is that thing that we did all together and one guy gave the answers and then we all did it? That's that one. You are federally required as an emergency responder to have those 3 online FEMA certificates done. If you don't have those, your agency can be disqualified from federal grants. So ICS 100, ICS 200, NIM 700. And if some of you guys like this stuff, like me, I'm like one of 9 people in the world that like ICS stuff. You can even reach into NIMS 800. That's another online one. And then you start getting into the classroom-based ones, ICS 300, ICS 400. Those are also good, especially for your leadership teams, your chiefs, your directors, who maybe will be the incident commander in a large-scale type of an incident. Understanding how to operate in those large-scale incidents, that's what you learn in the ICS 300 and 400. So it also promotes the coordination of emergency incidents at the regional, state, and national level as well. And we'll kind of talk about where this came from. So it was implemented in 2004. It came out of the 9/11 terror attacks, because in New York that day, there was multiple command posts set up at the World Trade Center. There was multiple radio frequencies being used, and certain groups could not talk to other groups. So you had like your New Jersey Port Authority police who were in charge of security at the World Trade Center. They could not talk to NYPD or FDNY. They didn't have the right radio frequencies put in place. So there was like 3 or 4 different command centers set up there. In all reality, you should have had one command center. Everybody was going through that command center. But having 3 or 4 of them, what were we doing? We were duplicating resources. We were duplicating things. So we were wasting resources. So that's why it's so important to understand the framework. And a real quick story on how this came about. So President Bush, back after the attacks, put in what was called Presidential Directive 5. That told FEMA and Department of Homeland Security and those groups to get together and get something that the entire country can use and everybody understands and everybody fits into. So when we have this happen again, not if, when we have this happen again and we're pulling responders from across the nation, they can all come into our jurisdiction. They can flip on a certain radio channel and everybody can talk to each other. And when we talk about terminology, everybody knows what we're talking about. Those are all things that were put into this directive. This directive is about 78 pages long, so there was a lot more than just those things. But what happened is they got everybody together, all the stakeholders, got them all in one room and said, we need to figure out a way that we can have span of control, which is the number of people who are reporting to a direct supervisor. We need to understand our span of control. We need to understand how we break this out so our incident commander is not inundated with radio traffic. And they're trying to figure this out. You have 2 or 3 Cal Fire guys, Cal Forestry Fire guys sitting in the back of the room. And I'm kind of just shooting from the hip on this. I don't exactly know how it happened, but this is how it was explained to me. They're racking their brains trying to figure out what can we put into place to make this work. The Cal Fire guys raised their hand. They're like, well, we've got something. They told them, we put this into play back in the 70s, the mid 70s or early 70s, when the California wildfires really started to get crazy. Once we had people moving from the cities out into these wooded areas, and there was the large rash of fires because that wildland urban interface was happening, and somebody's burning their trash, burned down 80,000 acres of forest because it got away from them. So they put this plan in place. What the U.S. government did, like they so often do, is they decided to take this, say they came up with it, and call it Incident Command or National Incident Management System. So this has been around since the early 70s in California. Probably one of the only good things that came out of that state and still has come out of that state. So one good thing they got good fire guys out there. So it provides that framework and allows everybody to work together. It also integrates the private sector and our non-governmental organizations into this system. There's all sorts of different things that happen that the incident command structure is put into play. The Super Bowl last weekend, the incident command structure was used there. They use it every year. They plug people into the different areas, and they use the same framework that we use on a large wildland fire, on a mass casualty incident that involves 20, 30 patients. Same system. So that organizational structure, the good part about it is it can be flexible and it can rapidly be adaptable. We can change it as we go. Provides the terminology, the resource classification, personnel training, and certification. So let's just think about it in this room. As far as ambulance services that we have a number of rescue squads, we have a number of BLS transport agencies, and we maybe have 1 or 2 ALS transport agencies. So when I ask for an ambulance to come out of staging, if I'm the operations guy or the logistics guy on a large scale incident, and I say, I need one of them white boxes, they're going to send me the first one in line, right? What if that is a rescue squad? What if that's Stratford that has 2 highly trained EMRs on it, but now we want them to transport a patient to the hospital? Are we breaking state law by doing that? Yes, we are. That's why we classify this. So Dave's ambulance from Stratford would be considered a rescue vehicle. They would probably be put into more of the triage type situations, those things. Or we would split his crew, an EMT with one of his people and another EMT with the other one. So now we can legally run and be a BLS transport service on both of those sides. So when we classify those resources, that's where we understand what we're getting. If I ask for a big red fire truck to go fight a grass fire and somebody sends me a structure pumper, is that going to be able to get out across those prairies? No, probably not. We're probably going to do some damage to it. So the resource classification, you classify them into BLS, ALS, and then first response ambulances. On the fire side of things, we type it all the way out. We go from type 1 to type 6 engines. Our type 1 engine is going to be that structure pumper that you see in the larger cities or that never really leaves town. And our type 6 is that 4-door, 4-wheel drive pickup that's fighting the grass fires and the brush fires. So we type them all out like that. So when I'm the logistics guy or I'm the operations guy, however it fits into it, and I say, well, I need a fire truck. What kind of fire truck do you need? I need a type 6. Okay, there's one over there. Send them your way. I need an ambulance. What kind of ambulance do you need? Well, I need one that's got paramedics on it. Okay, I need this ALS one that's sitting right here. So by doing that, we're getting the right resources to the right problem. The personnel training as well. It helps when we all take this training. And I strongly encourage you guys who maybe, fudge this training a little bit to go back and go through the ICS 100, 200, and NIM 700 again, so you can really get a grasp of what we're talking about. It's boring stuff if you don't like it, but it'll help you understand what to do in these types of incidents. And then the certification side of things. If you are a certified agency, a certified transport agency, that stuff all comes into play. On the certified other side of it is, do we have certified firefighters? Do we have certified EMTs, or do we just have our first responders who are going to do a great job, but now we can't give them a critical patient to transport because they're going to be checking vitals. They're going to be doing their ABCs, but if that patient needs more care, they're not going to get it. So that certification factor also comes in there. And for those of you that have those little tags that your emergency manager gives you, that was another federal grant or federal award to all the emergency managers. That little scan box in there, that's supposed to scan your agency and your qualifications. We're a little bit behind in that in some counties, but when that gets scanned at an incident, it's supposed to say if you are a South Dakota certified firefighter, if you're a wildland firefighter, if you're an EMT, if you're a paramedic, EMR, right on down the line. That's all supposed to be plugged in to that little box. So when you scan it in an agency, we can say, oh, you're this. We're going to put you over here because we need you over here. So that's how that certification goes. So our major components here, and you guys watch the clock for me if I get a little long here. Let's try to get this one wrapped up by 11:45, 11:50. So the preparedness side of things, we need to be prepared. We need to have our plans. Communications and information management. How are we going to communicate? For those of you that have been around a little while and you've been on a large scale incident, what's the number one thing when you guys do your after action that comes up? Communication sucks, right? Maybe not lack of it, because we got people jabbering on the radio all day long, but they're on the wrong channel. They're not talking to us. So one good thing on the state side of things, and I got some guys in the room that were on the same incident, is we had a very large grass fire, brush fire, south of Baldo and Roscoe back in November. Is that when it was? October? November? November 6th. That was a wind-driven fire. We had upwards of 70 miles an hour that day. And we had, I forget what it was, 16 different departments, something like that. Well over 70 vehicles on that scene, and probably pushing 200 firefighters probably on that scene. And the guys who were in command of that thing very early on understood that communications was going to be an issue. So the good thing that we have going in our state with our state digital system is you all have those state radios in your ambulances. And there's a bank of channels in there that is called Special Ops or VTACs. There's two different banks there. Your Special Ops channels, every state radio, and some people argue with me on this. I don't have those. Yeah, you do. Every state radio that is in South Dakota that's been programmed as a state digital radio on the state digital system has those Special Ops channels in it. So what our incident commander and our operations guy did is you have to call a dispatch center and they have to assign you that channel. So we were lucky enough to get assigned Special Ops 4. Everybody coming in, we told them we were on Special Ops 4, and guess what? Communications was not an issue. Everybody on that scene could talk to each other. The only issue we had is we had 70 vehicles on there, and sometimes you had to wait your turn to talk because there was a lot of radio traffic going. But the good thing about that was we could hear everything and we could communicate with everybody. So that's the good thing about our state radio system. And if you guys have trouble with understanding the channels in there, you need to talk to your emergency manager, or you also need to talk to the people who program your radios. Those are the best people to train you in what is in those radios and how you're going to change the channels and which channels are those special ops channels, are those VTAC channels. The VTAC channels run on the same frequency as the feds. So if we have a large incident where we have federal help coming in and we're on VTAC 5, we tell them we're on VTAC 5, they'll flip their radios to that and they can talk to us as well. So our state system is underutilized, considerably underutilized. So if you don't understand, it, please find somebody that can train you on it. Because I've had so many people say, well, we just want it so it comes up to that channel that we always use. Don't ever change that. Well, guess what? If you get called, and there's people laughing because that's exactly what you're thinking. That's exactly what you told your radio guy. We don't want nothing else. We just want that channel. We want that when we turn the ambulance on, we turn the fire truck on, that channel needs to come up. So when we do that, we're closing our mind to everything else that's in there. So get that training, something to write down, and get that training so everybody understands how to flip the different channels and get on the right channel when we have a large scale type of an incident. Our ongoing management and maintenance, these incidents usually aren't over in 20 minutes. We got real lucky on that large grass fire that day. Is we had it out. There was a few flare-ups, I think, later on in the evening, but we got about 3 inches of snow that next morning. That put it out. Otherwise, probably would have been chasing. If that would have been in August, we'd have been chasing that thing around for 2-3 weeks probably. If there had been no precipitation. So we got real lucky. That's that ongoing management and maintenance of an incident. Is even though the actual emergency might be over, there's still a lot of different things that are going to come into play as far as our ongoing stuff goes. And some of that on the EMS side of it is when you have those large scale incidents where we've taxed our responders to the absolute max. Now we need to start thinking about our critical incident stress debriefings and those things. That's going to be ongoing stuff. Getting our rigs put back together. If you are the triage ambulance for a bus wreck of 50 people, your ambulance is going to be destroyed, right? You're not going to have anything in there that you need. It's going to be all over the place. So that's ongoing maintenance as well. Do you have to do a mass order because you just used all the resources you have in your rig? Well, what if you get a call later today? You know, it can happen. So where are we going to find resources in a short manner? And Chad can speak to this when they flipped the ambulance from the previous service to Dade County, they had to get some things, and they were able to reach out to the hospital because it was in the middle of a blizzard. So just to get them guys going, they had to go over there and get some equipment. So do you have a hospital in your area that can help you with some of that stuff on a short-term basis if you run out of it? So our incident command system, sometimes referred to the incident management system. The purpose is to ensure responder safety, achieve our incident management goals, and ensure the efficient use of our resources. So, spinning off of that a little bit, achieve our incident management goals. How many of you, when you roll out of the bay to just a one-person type of a call, do you have an incident management goal in your mind? You're going to say, I don't think I do, but you do. What is your goal when you roll out of that bay? What's the first thing that should be? I want to make sure I come back safe. I want to make sure I'm safe. The next thing, I want to make sure that my team stays safe. And then the third thing is what? We want to mitigate this problem. We want to help this patient and mitigate this problem. That's an incident management goal. Just because it's one person and maybe 3 or 4 responders, that's fine. You can have incident management goals on every single call. You don't necessarily need to write them down, but in your head, thinking about what is our incident management goals. Number 1 and number 2 are always the same. My safety, my team's safety. Number 3 is going to be whatever your incident is. And then our efficient use of our resources. So if we have one call for somebody who stubbed their toe at 3 a.m, wants to go to the hospital, and we send 2 ambulances with 6 people, 2 police officers, 3 fire trucks, is that a very efficient use of our resources? Absolutely not. Now we get a call out on the highway, we get 1 ambulance and 1 fire truck. Is that a good use of our resources? No. So we need to make sure that we are using our resources properly and we're getting the right resources to the right incident. So we control that duplication and we control that freelancing. I've been in this business a long time, just like a lot of you guys have. Those people that freelance on fire and EMS scenes are the most dangerous people that we can have. If they do not fall into the incident command structure and understand their role, they are people that we do not want on our service, because they're going to get themselves hurt, they're going to get us hurt, and they're going to add to our emergency. And by freelancing, I mean, come in and you tell them to do something, but it's funner over on that side, so we're going to go over there. No, where'd my guy go? Oh, he's over there. He's not doing traffic control. He's over there doing this. Same thing goes on the fire scene. You know, who wants to be staying outside and be in safety or something like that? They want to be inside working. Same thing goes as EMTs. You don't want to be the one person that gets to be the guy that gets, or the gal that gets the cot, right? You want to be in there working. But if we have freelancers, it puts our entire team at risk. So you have to fit into the structure of what we're trying to do. Our organizational levels, they include sections, branches, divisions, and groups. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. And that's going to be an incident that evolves very quickly. So when we're thinking incident command, you're probably thinking of this huge chart with like 900 boxes on it. We have to fill all those in on an incident where we have 5 people. How are we going to do that? No, it's ever evolving. So when we have an incident command structure, I learned from a couple of firefighters that I learned from when I first started, was you call it like a 2-boxer, or you call it a 4-boxer. A 2-boxer is you have your incident commander, you have your operations division. It's all you need. It's 2 boxes, and then you fill in from there. Now you have a large scale incident like the Spencer tornado was that Doug talked about. You're probably looking at 20, 30, 40, 50 boxes, depending on the amount of people and the amount of resources that you needed on that. So it grows, and it comes back down to a smaller level, just depending on the complexity of the incident. So here's kind of just the gist of it. So you've got your operations, planning, logistics, and finance. Off of that, you have a branch. Maybe our branch is going to be fire and EMS. And then off of our EMS branch, we're going to have a couple of different divisions. We're going to have a couple of different groups. Same thing goes for the fire side. You might have a fire branch, and then you have your divisions and groups off of that. So breaking this down a little bit, our operations folks, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth as we go. Operations folks, they're the doers. They're the ones doing the task. Our planning people, they're the ones that are planning out the next 12 hours of our operational incident. Our logistics, they're the getters. They're the ones that get stuff for us. I like ops. I like logistics. Logistics is fun. You get to find things. You get to bring them in. Sometimes when you say, hey, I got this coming, and then finance says, what's it going to cost? It's going to cost this. Nope, you're not bringing that in. You're going to maybe have them be on staff or on call, but we're not bringing them here, because once they come here, we're paying them when we get into those large scale type incidents. Our finance, they're the ones paying the bills. And we need to have finance anytime that we break out of a normal sized incident, like those tornado type incidents. For those first 24 hours, your city's essentially going to be on the hook on the finance. Your city or county are going to be the ones that are saying, yes, you can fill all of these trucks that have just showed up with fuel, and we'll foot the bill if nobody else does. So those are those types of things. You don't necessarily have to have a 3-month incident to have a finance division. You've got to have somebody that will essentially say, yes, you can fill fuel so you can go home. And we'll cover it, or somebody will cover it, so we can at least get those trucks home. So our roles and responsibilities, our command, their role is going to be commanding the incident. Finance is paying, logistics is getting, ops is the doers, planning is planning those next operational periods, and our command staff, they work together with different groups. We can have like an incident commander aide who is right next to the incident commander. A lot of times that's kind of the assistant. So if the incident commander needs to step away, that incident commander aide can now fall right into that role. They've been there the whole time. They know what's going on. It's a seamless transition. Overall incident, our incident commander it's important to know who that IC is, how to communicate with the IC, and where the command post is located. Also, that IC may transfer to command with someone with more experience in a critical area. Happens a lot. So okay, we got a car crash. We have a van load of kids versus a carload of kids. We have 9 patients. Who's going to be our incident commander, do you guys think? First on scene, yep. That is one of my brand new EMR students who just passed their test. Are they still the incident commander? If they're first on scene? Yep. Very good. If you guys didn't hear that online, is yes, that first trained person is our incident commander, whether it's that brand new firefighter who just took their test on a Wednesday, or it's a brand new EMR who just took their test, on Tuesday. Those people will be in charge. Once others get there, then we can pass command. The thing that I don't really like to hear is I'm taking command. No, you're going to get command passed you. You're going to talk to that person who's in charge at that given moment. You're going to get briefed from that person, and then you're going to ask that person, would you like me to take command? And usually they've already handed you the stuff in there. It's asses and elbows running the other way, right? So they're like, yep, here it is, go, I'm gone. So that's usually what happens. But now if that person's a little bit more experienced and the chief shows up, does the chief automatically get to assume command? Not necessarily. If they're doing a good job, that chief should step back and fill a different role. One of the most common things that happens in our part of the world is when the chief shows up, they automatically assume command or they take charge. And I've even heard of it, chiefs that are on their way back to a town that's having a fire. They're an hour away and they have, I asked who's in command. Well, I was. I thought you said you weren't here. Yeah, I had command from my vehicle on my way here. No, you didn't. You did not have command. You were interjecting and you were trying to take command, but you didn't know what was happening on the scene. So no, you didn't have command. You were helping, but you didn't have command. So just understand that it's not necessarily that person that's got the most bugles on their collar that takes over command. It's a person who's got the experience. Finance, they're responsible for documenting everything. And when we get to our little bit of a scenario here at the end, I'll tell you how this worked out. Logistics, they're the ones getting stuff for us. And we had this going in our large incident that we had out there south of Roscoe. We had some logistics stuff kind of being put together by the county emergency manager, and he did a fantastic job with it. We had a fuel truck there. We had all sorts of food there. We had all sorts of water tenders there. I mean, we were really set up there. And a lot of times when the word gets out that there's a large fire going, everybody just shows up with food. We need to have a place to put them. We need to put them in a staging area. We need to put them out of danger. We don't want those people being involved in the incident. Operations at those very large, complex incidents, they're going to be responsible for managing the tactical operations. Now, if we just have like a 2-box, our operations is the tactical people. They're not necessarily managing them, but we still have to have a leader, because you guys heard me talk about span of control earlier, is you want to have one leader for every 7 people. And we're talking larger scale incidents here. So now let's just break it down a little bit. We have a 2-vehicle accident. What are you guys getting for a 2-vehicle accident? How many people? 10? You're out of the span of control of where you should be with 10 people. Now you're going to need to have 2 people essentially that are overseeing that incident. And the best way to do that is you're going to probably have an operations division, and you're going to have your incident commander, and maybe we're going to have logistics in there. But you're going to have your incident commander, you're going to have your ops, and then you're going to have your 2 teams that go off of that, your 2 ambulances that go off of that. So your incident commander oversees one person. They oversee the operations person. And Doug talked about last night with your communications officers, your triage officers, all those people fit into that line. And they have to have somebody that they report to. And then they report to maybe the incident commander. Because if there's 10 of you and you want to talk to the incident commander and you all have a radio, how is that incident commander going to even know what's going on? They're not. So you've got to break it down a little bit, and you've got to shield the incident commander from all of this radio traffic. That is one thing that if I could go back and change, we would have changed on that large scale incident, is the incident commander essentially was in charge of 200 people that day. We didn't necessarily have it broke out into divisions, but it's hard to break something out in divisions when there's a 70-mile-an-hour wind and fire behind it. So you just kind of get in line and chase it and talk. That's kind of what we did. But if I had to go back on that one, we maybe would have broke that out in divisions and had a division supervisor that then talked to the incident commander. So the incident commander was only listening to 3 people, his 3 divisions, right? How easy is it for him to figure this out and get a game plan together if he's only listening to 3? A lot easier than if he's listening to 120, right? So our planning, they go ahead and they solve the problems that may arise. They develop our incident action plan. Our planning people should be the most patient people that you can find, because they're going to be sitting in the command post, and you're going to want them as an incident commander to now put together the next operational plan for maybe the next 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. They're going to be writing down objectives that we want to accomplish in that period of time. They're also going to be the ones that if problems arise, we take them to them and they plan those problems out. So people that can handle a little bit of stuff, and also people that are very patient. Our command staff, these are the people that fall into line kind of underneath the incident commander. We have our safety officer, our overall safety officer of the incident, and now you can break that off as well. You have a large scale building. I heard a building collapse somewhere this morning. I saw a headline in Alaska, I think actually it was a building collapse. So now you have a building collapse and you have 4 sides to it. You have crews working on all 4 sides. Can one safety officer take care of all those sides of that building? No. So now you may have 4 safety officers or 3 safety officers. Those people all report to that initial safety officer. Public information officer, really, really important. We talk about this one. They talk to the media in a clear and with clear and understandable information. This is a spot that we need to spend a few minutes to talk about here. So without going into any detail on any of the incidents that are coming to mind right now, is how many people should talk to the media? 1. Does that happen all the time? It never happens. Never. So the one incident I'm thinking of happened down in the southeastern part of the state a couple of years back. There was a workplace shooting, and on the 6 o'clock news, they talked to 6 different people. You think it was all the same story? No. They talked to the mayor. They talked to the police chief. They talked to the state's attorney. No idea why that was. They talked to the emergency manager. They talked to county sheriff. They talked to the head of the ambulance service. 6 people. Do you think that Kellerland or KSFY or whatever they call themselves now, do you think that they care if they're talking to the public information officer? No, they don't. Another incident, a different part of the state, quite a large scale type of an incident, a lot of media involved. 8 people talked to the media on that one. We had everything from, I don't want to give it away. We had everything from police talking to the media, emergency managers, people that were in charge of this specific area, this specific building, 2 different people from there. We had the governing body for that specific building talking to the media as well. Yeah, so just crazy amounts of people talking to the media. Nobody wants to be in the front of the camera when a picture is being taken, but man alive, those TV cameras show up and they tell you you're going to be on 6 o'clock news. I'm up. I want to be in. I want to talk. You're never going to find me or any of my counterparts in the fire marshal's office do that. We see media, we turn and go the other way. We don't want to talk to them. We can't talk to them. We have a public information officer for the entire state, the entire Department of Public Safety that talks to the media. So we don't have anything to do with them. And that really makes them mad sometimes when they show up on the scene and they're trying to talk to us and we just ignore them. It's fun for us, but they get mad. So same thing happened on a similar incident in Hamlin County. There was a more higher visibility type of an incident that we had a fire in a building that was a little bit more high vis, and we had two news outlets show up, and they were told to stay in a certain area, and the fire chief had to go talk to them 7 times, and he had to finally threaten them with the police coming out because they kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer because they wanted to talk to somebody. And the one guy said, well, I've got a deadline to get, so you guys need to talk to me. And I wish I could repeat some of the things the fire chief told them that day. But they did not get their interview that they wanted. They pretty much got told, you either leave now or we're going to have the sheriff escort you out of here. So Those are things that happen with these folks. They don't care if they're talking to the guy that just started on the department yesterday or has been on the department 20 years and is our public information officer. That is something that in your smaller departments, you need to have a public information officer who is dedicated to doing that, because they're not going to care who they talk to. They're going to find whoever they want, and the information is not going to be correct, more than likely. So we can also throw our liaison officer into this command staff, and they're the ones that relay information between the general staff, other agencies, different people in the command staff. They're kind of our go-betweens. So our communications, we talked about that, historically a weak point. We hit on a lot of that, where if you're using your state radios correctly and you understand the frequencies in there and the different channels in there, you can take this one and just kick it right out the window. Our communications also can allow for an accountability system for us as well. So if we're coming in and we say, this is Stratford Fire, we have 4 on board. I can mark down, if I'm the scribe for the IC or the IC, I can say Stratford Fire, 4 on board. I know I've got 4 people from Stratford. When we terminate that incident, Dave will call and say, Stratford Fire is clear, 4 on board. Guess what? Mark them off, accounted for. I don't have to do anything else. So that's why when you hear that radio traffic of so many on board, that's accountability. And dispatch probably isn't doing it, but it's for us. We can go back now and listen to that because it's recorded. We can make sure everybody left with the same people that they showed up with. When you show up, you need to check in with either the incident commander or the staging officer. When you get into large scale incidents, the incident commander could put that back on the staging officer. When you get called to show up to the town that's requesting you, that's out of your jurisdiction, and they say you need to check in with the staging officer at such and such a place. That doesn't mean get on the radio as soon as you get to town and say, this is so-and-so, or incident command, this is so-and-so, we're here. You probably won't get a response because they told you where to go. Go to that staging area. The staging officer will pull you out of there as you're needed. Report to your supervisor for that initial briefing. If you are put into play right away when you get there, find out who's in charge of that general area, get your initial briefing, go ahead and get your plan of what they're going to want you to do, and then also track your time, your personnel, and the equipment that you use. Because if this thing goes to the federal level, or even some of these state things that they've opened up money for in years past, is you can get money for it. If you do not have it documented, you aren't getting anything. So we have that accountability, making sure that our supervisors advise of your location, your actions, and your completed task. That doesn't mean that if they give you a job, we want you to triage these folks. When you get done, come back and talk to me. That doesn't mean go on and keep going, because if that supervisor doesn't know that you're done, they're thinking that triaging is still happening. And now we got people leaving the scene and we don't know what's going on. Once you get your task, when you get that task accomplished, report back to your supervisor, whether that's via radio or in person. Say, I'm done. What do you want me to do next? Because that person who's in charge of you probably has a checklist. And if you just freelance and you go outside and you just go on to the next thing without talking to somebody, that thing's not going to get checked off. We could duplicate our resources. We don't want to do that. And then it also tells us is where we can start demobilizing. I remember that large scale incident out there. We started demobilizing kind of when we got it under control. We started sending the farther departments back home because on a day like that, fire danger was high across the entire state. We wanted to make sure that we got those people back to their areas as quick as we could, just in case they got another call. Same thing goes on the EMS side of things. You get called to a bus crash with 50 people in it. You show up and there's only 2 people that are injured. They're going to say, okay, so-and-so, you and you can go home. We got it. Thank you. So we're going to get you back to your area. You're going to be demobilized. Preparedness. This involves the basic planning that's done before the incident happens. We're never going to be able to plan for every single one, but if we can put the framework in place, we can take that framework and adapt it to the incident. Okay? It involves decisions about planning and planning about the most likely natural disasters in your area. What should we have pre-planned in our areas? Tornadoes. What else? Flooding. Some of our areas flooding, some of them, nope, they never flood. But we still need to have the plans in place if we get a rush of 9 inches of rain like we've been getting and to blow some roads out. And now we still need to have that plan in place of how we're going to get that taken care of. You have some counties in the state that have these books that are as thick as the EMT book of their flood plans because they're in these floodplains. You have other ones that just have the large scale downpour flooding stuff because they're in areas that don't flood. What other natural disasters do we need to pre-plan? Let's stay with natural right now. What's that? Winter storms. How many of you guys have pre-plans in place for your ambulance to go out in the middle of a blizzard? You are missing the boat. I'll be perfectly honest with you. If you get a call next Wednesday, when we're supposed to get 5 inches of snow during the day and the wind's supposed to blow 50 to 60 miles an hour, and that's on top of the already 7 inches that they're projecting. So how are you going to get to that call that's 10 miles out of town? You're just going to say, well, we can't go. We're snowed in. What's your plan in place? Right, but if you don't have that plan in place, how long does it take to get that going? You got to call the guy who runs the snowplow. He's got to bust his way to the place where that snowplow is being housed. Now come to you. You're looking at a half hour. If that's an OB call or that's a cardiac call, you may as well just stay home if they've got it or they don't. So have those plans in place. How are you going to do that? One of my departments I'm on in Leola, we just put that plan in place about a month and a half ago. We had 3 ambulance calls in the middle of that December storm that we had, that 3-day or whatever we had there. 3 ambulance calls throughout that. The next week, there was text flying about how we need to get a snowplow because even though our county and our city, no problem, they'll help us. If that snowplow isn't housed in your bays at your station, you're 20, 30 minutes out. You're 20, 30 minutes behind the 8 ball already. What we did is we were lucky enough to we had purchased a 1-ton dually pickup to convert into a grass rig, and we purchased a snowplow for the front of that pickup. And now that's going to go ahead of our ambulance on any calls. And we're also going to put a rescue truck in between there to make sure that if that truck gets stuck, we have something that can pull it out to where we can keep going. So those are plans and those are things that you need to start thinking about before it actually happens. When the toads go off on Wednesday and you can't see out your door and you're like, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do here. That's a little late to be calling around. So you need to put those plans in place. I cannot stress that enough. The winter storm one needs to be in place. The right stakeholders need to be involved in those conversations and understand that. Aberdeen Fire Rescue, for example, for the last many, many, many years, when we've had a blizzard coming, we have had a county snowplow in the station ready to go when we go. They might spend 3 days there with us. That's just the way it is. You need to have that plan in place so you can get going with it. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah. You know, and there's another possibility is, you know, a lot of times your responders who are in town, a lot of times you can usually navigate in town, or that plow can go plow you out and come pick you up. Those responders that live out of town who are on call during that week, you maybe need to give up call because you're not getting to town. So there's also been instances where even in our volunteer side of things, is we've placed people in the station. They've slept on cots. They've done that stuff. So they're there when they need to go. So those are all plans to put into place to think about, because it's too late to do it when the tones go off. You can't see across the street. Cannot stress that enough. I honestly think that blizzard, and tornado, and flooding plans should all be requirements for every ambulance service that's licensed in this state, but we haven't gotten that far yet. That's my own opinion. Scene size up. All right, how we doing? Yep, I always talk long on this one. So scene size up. We get there, our initial assessment, making some preliminary decisions. What do I have? What do I need? What do I need to do? When is the time to start thinking about what do I have and what do I need? Is that when you get on scene and you see just mass casualties laying all over and you see trucks torn apart and just, you know, the apocalypse right there? When is the time to start thinking, what do I have and what do I need? What's that? So let me tell you this one. You get called, 2-vehicle accident, multiple injuries. How many ambulances are you going to roll right off the bat? At least 2. Now you show up on scene, you see it's a van with 8 people in it, and you see it's a vehicle with 4 people in it. Now you have 12 patients for 2 ambulances. I'll tell you a little story. Back in 2018, there was an accident that happened right in between Leola and Eureka. Those calls came in. There was 6 people in that vehicle. The calls came in as 2-vehicle accident, multiple injuries. The individual who took charge and who kind of took incident command out of that deal, he had 4 ambulances coming, 4 or 5, and 2 helicopters coming to that before he was even out of the city limits. That is where you need to go. And there will be some people that argue with me on that, and I will go to my grave saying I am the right one on that. Do not wait until you get on the scene to see what you have, to be like, okay, yeah, we need some more stuff here. And when it takes you 10 minutes to get to the scene, you should have had those calls made prior. And those people should be coming. You get on scene and it's 2 vehicles that bumped into each other and somebody's complaining of neck pain and you don't need them. Guess what? Get on the radio, turn around. They don't care. Same thing goes on the fire side, fire guys. If you get a call for I had one of these the other day, get a call for a tractor fire that's 30 feet from a house and the wind's blowing out of that direction, and 2 departments were being sent. I called for 2 others because if that would have got to that house that day, we needed way more manpower. Get out there. That wasn't the case. We called them, we turned them around, no big deal, no harm. So think about what you have and what are you going to need and who do you need to call. Call for it early. Do not wait until you get on scene. I'll have people that, like I said, argue with me all day long. Well, I really like to wait until I get on scene to see what I have. I don't want to bother anybody. You're not bothering anybody. If you call and say you should have been here 10 minutes ago, you need to step it up. That's more of a bother than if you call us, we get rolling, you say, nope, we got it. Turn around. Same thing goes for care flight. You get a call, you get a mechanism of injury call that could be serious. You get your med flights going, your care flight or Sanford Air Med, get those people going. If you turn them around, there's no charge. They don't mind. Get them going, get them coming. Establishing command. Somebody needs to take command. That's either the first person that shows up or that person with the most experience or is the most senior official that falls into that category. The notification to other responders should go out. We need more responders. We need more agencies. We need all this stuff. Get that coming. Get those resources coming. Communications, if it's possible, we're going to try to use face-to-face to limit our radio traffic. If we are on the radio, do not use those 10 codes or signals. Talk in plain terms. Our equipment needs to be reliable, durable, and field tested. If you have portable radios that sit on a shelf at your department and they collect a bunch of dust, and you're like, I sure hope those work when we need them. They're not going to. They are not going to work. Get those things out, use them, understand how they work. And be sure that we have backups in place. What are our backups if we lose our radio frequency? We have a tornado that comes through and takes our repeater down. What are we going to do? We have that in place. You guys know. You can go to your cell phones. You can also go radio to radio. If you're within a certain distance, you can go radio to radio. You're not getting that repeater, but if you have line of sight, you can use your radios that way. Our medical incident command, also known as the EMS branch. Usually this is going to come off of a different branch. Now, we could also have an EMS official in the unified command structure as well. That's something that's totally fine, just depending on how that incident shakes out and what we need. So it's usually a branch, usually comes off operations is where our EMS division and our EMS branch comes from. Their primary role, like Doug talked about last night, triage, treatment, and transport. So we need to have a triage officer, usually a treatment officer, and usually a transport officer. Here's what we got. Our triage, they triage. Our treatment, they separate those patients, each priority category, just like you guys did last night in the exercise. Make sure that we have safety for all members in the area. Document those activities using your little tags. And then your transportation. Where's our loading zone? The good thing about a loading zone, or the thing to think about on loading zone that makes it a lot better, is have a loading zone that is just a one-way type of a loading zone. So if you're in a city and you have something that happens in town, have that loading zone come in and go out a different way. Make sure our entrance and our exits aren't the same, because that's going to cut down, that's going to help our flow of traffic. So if you've ever seen like these large scale active shooter scenes that you see pictures of, all those ambulances are facing the same direction. You're thinking, well, when they get loaded, how the hell are they going to come back this way? They've got a different route. They're going out a different way. That medical branch, your triage supervisor, they're in charge of what you guys did last night. Your treatment supervisor, that's where we're treating, and our transportation supervisor coordinate that transportation, where are we taking them, right? Understand the hospitals in your area, how many they can handle before they are inundated. Some of your critical access hospitals, that's 5 people. You have 50, where are we taking the other 45? So our staging supervisor, somebody that's out in that staging area that's giving our logistics or our ops people the equipment and the vehicles that they need. Our physicians on scene. Doc left, right? So some physicians on scene can be really, really good. Some physicians on scenes can be pains, major pains. So if we have physicians that show up and say, hey, I'm a doc, and you recognize them, guess what? Put them in the treatment area. We don't want them triaging. That's not their forte. Like Doug said last night, is our perfect triage officers are our new EMTs and our new EMRs. We get a crusty paramedic or an old ER doc, they can save everybody, but they can't. We are terrible at triage in our country. If you ever get the opportunity to take a triage class from any of the Israeli paramedics, Israeli police officers, those guys are awesome at it, because they deal with it so often. They'll have a busload of people triaged in just literally 10 minutes because they're so good at it. And they are not afraid to put a black tag on somebody. We are. We don't want to. We think we can save everybody. But why would you dump resources into someone that is mortally wounded, and we're dumping all these resources when we have others that are in the red stage and even the yellow stage that we're not putting the correct resources on, and we lose those people? That's something to really think about. Our physician can also provide that on-scene medical direction or medical control if that's how your system is set up, and we have that availability, or we have that authority to do that, and then provide care in the treatment sector as appropriate. Our rehab supervisor, if this is a large-scale incident, we need to have a rehab spot for our firefighters and our EMTs that can go get a drink of water, get away from the scene, so they can recover as well. Because the last thing we want to have happen is those people starting to get injured, right? Extrication, special rescue, those are going to be usually taken care of by the fire department. Our special rescue is going to be our special teams, our rescue teams, our hazmat, our technical rescue, those groups, they're going to fit into that category. They usually function under that EMS branch or also under the operations branch as well. Our morgue supervisor, this is another one. Sometimes we don't think of this. If we have multiple fatalities, we're going to need a place to put those dead people until we can get them into morgue trucks. The state has 2 morgue trucks that can be dispatched to a scene. And for some of you more seasoned folks in the room, you guys remember Flight 232 Heavy out of that crashed in Sioux City, right? It's a pretty big deal. If you ever get the opportunity, go on YouTube, and it's about an hour long video, and it's put on by Captain Haynes, who was the captain of that aircraft, and he takes you through. They go through the radio traffic. It's phenomenal. I love it. I listen to it like probably once a month, and listen to that and just understand how they put their things in place, and how they were able to do some of that stuff. Was they were lucky enough to have had a disaster drill on those airport grounds 1 year prior to this thing coming down. So they were able to find their flaws, and they were able to put their resources in place. Another thing that helped them was this happened at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right in between shift change at their 2 major hospitals that they had. So they had both shifts able to work on people. So listen, give it a listen. It's a really good talk. He breaks it down into all the different components of how they had so many survivors in that incident. And they talk about the morgue side of things. They had, I think, 12 funeral directors, 12 funeral directors' wives, 12 funeral directors' mothers who understand the system. They were all involved in that morgue side of things. The mass casualty incidents, 3 or more people or 2 or more people puts a great demand on our system, and things that also have the potential to produce those multiple casualties. In our part of the world, obviously we have the violence, we have the active shooter situations that could pop up that'll provide those mass casualties. We have those larger scale vehicle accidents with multiple people. And then we're a flyover state. We could have an airplane drop out of the sky, and we could have those incidents as well. And our natural disasters too. So our MCIs make sure we're initiating the ICS system. Us and our team cannot treat and transport all the injured patients at the same time. So we need to triage them out. You guys know that. Never leave the scene with patients. If there are still other patients who are sick or wounded on that scene. Something that we sometimes don't remember is if we are gonna, take our ambulances off that scene, we need to make sure we got others on that scene. Also, what I've always been taught is if you have a large scale incident, use that first rig that shows up on the scene. That's your triage ambulance. That ambulance doesn't get to go nowhere. Everybody that's coming out of that scene gets ran through that ambulance if they're yellows or reds, and then they get taken off from there, depending upon how it's all going to work out. It doesn't have to be in the ambulance. That can just be your treatment area around that ambulance. That ambulance doesn't get to go. They're going to be there for the duration. Declare our MCI. Make sure we are letting our hospitals know that as well. Because if your hospital is a sleepy little hospital, critical care access hospital, and they start seeing 4 or 5 ambulances roll in, they're probably going to shut the lights off and lock the door because they're not ready for it. Make sure you're letting them know early so they can get more people in. Our critical care access hospitals at night, what do they usually run with? 1 nurse and one CNA. We show up with 1 patient. That could overwhelm them if they have 2 or 3 in their hospital as well. And you get those triage procedures going, additional resources. You guys know all about triage. Now disaster management. Widespread event. How do we take care of this? We have our floods, our fires, our hurricanes that could potentially result in widespread injuries. Our role is to respond when requested and report to that IC for the assigned task. We have a casualty collection area set up that could overwhelm us, coordinate through the ICS. So, you guys remember this? The derecho, right? Spawned tornadoes in Castlewood back on May 12, 2022. I was not sure, fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to have a relationship with their sheriff down there. I had just been on a fatal fire with him about 3 weeks prior. And I texted him and said, sure hope everything's going good down there. Just heard Castlewood got hit. If you guys need anything, holler. I get a text back, 8 a.m. Wonder what that means. I put a question mark. What do you mean? Be here, 8 a.m. Okay. So I was doing testing up in Britain that night, got home, took off the next morning, got down there at 8 a.m. and helped them put their incident into incident command structure. So if you talk to any of these guys, and I just called them before I left because I just added this in the back, is they had the right idea. They knew what needed to be done. They didn't have it set up. So what we did there, you can't see the whole thing, but we have a unified command structure. We have fire, we have the sheriff, and we have the mayor in there. Coming off of that, we have our PIO, which we put 2 people in charge because the sheriff was still responding to other calls in the county. They had other cities that were hit, so he was not in town the entire time. So our mayor was also a PIO. Those are the only 2 people who talked to the media that entire duration, unless it was cleared with one of those 2 guys. We had our safety officer. We had our liaison, which would have been the State Emergency Management Office. We had our Otter Tail Power guy in that group as well. And we had our IC aide. Our IC aide was the the finance officer for the city. She also fell into the finance division. Early on in this thing, I got there at 8. I met the fire chief and I met the former fire chief who fell into our ops side of things, which was fantastic. I met them for the first time at 8 o'clock that morning. By 8:30, we had this thing in place and it was rolling. This essentially, when we talked about this for those 15 minutes to try to get the lowdown on what the plans were supposed to be for that day, we figured it would take 3 days to clear the streets in that town from trees, debris, all that stuff. We started this thing at 8:15 on May 13th, the day after the tornado hit. and we had every street passable by 6 p.m. that night. By putting people into this division or into this system and divisioning them out into their certain areas, we were able to do the most good with for the most people with limited resources. So luckily their fire department had just gone through SAWS training through South Dakota Wildland. So they knew all about cutting up trees and they were very, very good at it. They had just purchased 3 new chainsaws like that winter. So they had plenty of equipment. Our guy who was also the safety officer, he had a wood cutting business. So he had all the tools to sharpen chains and all that good stuff. So, I mean, it just worked out really, really well. So our logistics guy, Brent is his name. Brent does that for a living. He is a maintenance type clerk for a company that he works for. He's all about, getting things and understanding where to get them from. This whole system worked really, really well because we had the right people and we plugged them into the right places. Now, if I'd have plugged Brent into ops and plugged Jerry into logistics, wouldn't have went good because Jerry didn't know a thing about logistics. He was our ops guy. He was the former fire chief. He knows how to command. So we put him in the ops side of things. He was in charge of that whole operations division. So you can see how it got out here. South Dakota National Guard, we had them in town for traffic control. When this thing happened at 8 a.m., the call went out for people to show up and help. By 9:45, we had to close the town down. We had over 70 pieces of equipment, 70 trucks, tractors, loaders, everything in town to help with this thing. We had to shut it down. We had too many people in town. Everybody's hours were tracked. All that was tracked. When this thing went federal, everybody got their money. So that's why it's so important to track these things and track these resources. Our city, they took on that task of saying, yep, you guys fill fuel at the gas station in town. Have them mark it down for the city. This is May 14th, a little bit smaller. We were able to scale it back a little bit more, but they put one of these in place on May 15th. I was down there for 2 days. They put one of these in place on May 15th, and by May 16th, they were able to handle it with a 2-boxer. They had IC and ops. So it does get smaller. So, that's how this stuff works. Anybody have any questions? Any comments, any concerns? So when you have that severe weather event or you have that MCI in your community, don't hesitate to call for your resources. There's so many resources out there. Make sure you have that open dialogue with your emergency manager. When you tell them that you need this, this, and this, it's their job to get it to the state duty officer. You can call myself, you can call anybody in our office on the fire side of things to help set some of this stuff up. We've got a lot of training in this, and we're more than happy to help. So anything else? Any questions online, or did I lose y'all?